It's a beautiful day on Hoth base, a beautiful day for a rebellion. Would you be on Hoth? Could you be on Hoth? It's a neighborly day on this Hoth base, a neighborly day for the rebellion. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to do space weather bundled up. I have always wanted to talk weather on the station, so let's make the most of this Hoth base day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my space weather viewer? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be a Joule like my neighbor? And if you are my neighbor, know how to walk on ice, because you will be unlived if you don't know how to walk on ice. You can just forget about, survival. In Pennsylvania, when it snows, we walk on water. Anyway, on today's video, we'll be talking about space weather, Earth weather. It's a little on the cool side here in Lehigh Valley, PA. And we'll talk a little bit about economics, since we have silver prices over $120 an ounce and gold prices at $5,500 an ounce. The US dollar at the lowest it's been on the dollar index for 4 years. It's the dollar crisis that Peter Schiff was talking about for decades, years, as monetary policy in the US has only gotten worse. Worse, not better, for decades, for over 20 years. Something like, 25 years of utter economic incompetence in the US has led to the dollar itself. Now, fortunately, the dollar is still vastly superior to the euro, yen, etc., but because of global economic issues created by bad economic policies in the US, here we are. Enjoy the housing bubble and the AI bubble. They're about to burst. And regardless of what anybody wants, markets don't care, markets don't forgive, and markets don't forget. So there's that. Peter Schiff is an economically literate YouTuber. You should check him out. He also runs a number of investment organizations, as well as gold and silver sales. But this is not an ad for Peter Schiff. This is just a talk about economics. So Tesla announced earnings yesterday, and I suspect that's going to be a disaster because, well, what Elon said didn't sound good for Tesla. Anyway, I'm going to be right back as some things load up here. And so bear with me. I'll be back in 2 shakes of a frozen raccoon tail. Me being the self-aware Joule that I am, I like to have the snot off my face for the stream, because it makes me look a little bit less like a Joule, which is part zombie and part ghoul, if you're wondering what a Joule is. All right, so let's talk space weather and Earth weather, and then maybe we'll talk about some more economic stuff. But Tesla announced earnings yesterday, and Tesla's earnings were down. Tesla's earnings were down. And Musk talked about, Musk mumbled around and sort of talked about how he's going to move stuff around. They're going to pull two cars off of the line. They're going to get rid of the X and the S class, and they're going to focus on AI, and they're going to invest into XAI, which isn't even an auto endeavor, and they're going to start focusing on robots that nobody wants, powered by AI that nobody has. So the misbranding of AI continues. This unintelligent computer code continues to be trotted out as if it's some sort of solution to a problem that anybody has. And of course, the fully self-crashing vehicles continue on as well, using the public roads as a laboratory. So it's completely unacceptable nonsense. And so like we'll see what investors think about these what I would like to call a shit show, because it's a shit show. It is a shit show. I mean, if you don't think there's a bubble, have you looked at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ, the three major U.S. indices? Have you looked at those? They look like a bubble. The market doesn't go up forever. It has to go back down. That's how markets work. Institutional investors take profit at about 30% profit typically. They take some out of a 30% gained equity issue. So that's how they do their fund allocation. And of course, sometimes bad news in one organization leads to bad news in the entire sector. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the auto sector today, as Tesla acts like it's gonna only be half an auto company and half an AI slopware slash humanoid robot company for some reason. Let us know in the comments if you want to buy a $26,000 humanoid robot that it's unclear if it's going to be just radio controlled. Like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do that? It's a terrible investment. So anyway, I'll stop talking about Tesla now, because we try to stay away from too much humor on the channel and stick with non-fictional content, like, what's going on with the sun and so on. So we've got a number of active regions rising here on the east. That's nice if you like to see space weather happening. As you can see, there are active regions down here, which looked like they were beta class yesterday. We'll show an analysis of those. And another active region about to rise up here as we see some coronal loops forming there on the northeastern limb. Flaring should be up a little bit from yesterday. And indeed it is. We're approaching the C-class background flux levels now that you would expect to be more characteristic this close to solar maximum, only a little over a year outside of solar maximum. So here's the latest. That's not the latest. Let's skip that. There's cosmic ray flux. The lower line shows you back to 1964. The middle line is the 30-day cosmic ray flux. This is the 4-bush minimum created by that large proton event and geomagnetic storm that we had from the last major CME impact. That's a coronal mass ejection, for those of you who are new to the channel and or space weather itself. And if you are new, thanks for tuning in. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. Don't forget to press the subscribe button. That way you'll see the content, the daily space, the world's most comprehensive daily space weather content right there in your YouTube subscription feed. If you leave a comment, we may even put it on screen like this. And if you're viewing in syndication, don't hesitate to leave a comment then as well. We see all comments. And we hold comments in high esteem, even the silliest ones. Just keep in mind that we are free speech purists. who basically don't tolerate any censorship. We encourage all legal speech on the channel, so watch what you say. You might find yourself accountable. Here's the Hux forecast from University Reading, and it's not showing any new incoming CMEs. Earth is represented by a black circle over there on the right side, and all you can see are coronal hole high-speed streams, which are these arc-like features. Solar wind, has it de-elevated yet from where it was? As we saw high velocity solar wind, it's come down a little bit now in the 500s. 530 kilometers, make it 556 kilometers, 556. Solar wind density is still kind of low here, below 1 proton per cubic centimeter. Little minor impact happened here, where we saw a little increase in the, you can see the change in the plasma temperature. That's a little minor CME impact lasting a few hours. Didn't really do very much of the KP index. And the top pane is the magnetic fields, which are currently pretty nominal, pretty uninteresting there. Total field of 4 nanotesla with a BZ of +1. Those stats are measured out here at Lagrangian 0.1. I just like to show that so people are oriented, so they know where things are. Those spacecraft, they orbit Lagrangian 0.1. Shown here, it is this gravitational equilibrium point. And that's a real-time visualizer, a near real-time visualizer that's going to show you where the orbits are located. Next, we'll show Earth's magnetosphere model, the space weather modeling framework here from the University of Michigan. Shout out to the Wolverines. There you can see some little pressure changes happening. This depicts the last 6 hours. It takes into account all kinds of different data points like the electron flux and solar wind information and so on. GOES magnetometers here. You can see the GOES, looks like the GOES 18 and 19 had to make some maneuvers there. Those arc jet moments are when the spacecraft must maneuver. They create plasma by firing up their engines, which affect their magnetometer readings. That's why they show the arc jet moments. There's the moments, the arc jet moments of the GOES 18 as it maneuvered to maintain its near geosynchronous orbit. Next is NOAA's forecast. What do you got, NOAA? NOAA's not forecasting any space weather. Things are calm. Radial flux down here to 130 solar flux units as reported by Solon.info. Sunspot number is at 92 sunspots. 92 sunspots, folks. If you're frightened of low sunspot numbers, which you shouldn't be because they drop down to near zero all the time, near solar maximum. But if you are frightened of low sunspot numbers, now is the time to get in your bunker. Get in your bunker, folks. Get in your bunker. It's very important that you survive low sunspots, even though there's no reason to be spooked of low sunspots or high sunspots or solar flares or coronal mass ejections. Space weather is not spooky. It's just weather, like Earth weather. And if anybody's telling you the sun's going to kill you, you should unsubscribe from that channel immediately, because that is idiotic nonsense. So here is the coronagraph from the GOES 19, and it's there's the ejecta that it's showing, and it's that bright flash there. That's just Nibiru. Just kidding, folks. That's a solar prominence and a CME likely, but not likely an earthly directed one. If you do think it's Nibiru, definitely let us know in the comments about that, because perhaps that is something to fearmonger and talk nonsense about on today's stream. What do you say? Must be Nibiru. When in doubt, it's got to be Nibiru. Or perhaps your tax return's looking crappy because the galactic current sheet, a fictional cosmological structure invented by somebody who pretends to do science on YouTube. Next is our stereo A coronagraph. Let's see what that's got to show. If anything, hopefully new data. It looks like we've got some pretty... it's not so good. It's not so good. So yeah, obviously they're covering up the data so that we don't see Nibiru on the stream. So thanks NASA and the powers that be for covering up Nibiru on this stereo A imagery so that we don't have to talk about Nibiru, Planet X, or any other fictional solar system inhabitants. Oh, look out, the brown dwarf, folks. It must have been the brown dwarf. You know, the one that's invisible. We don't see it, but it's there because reasons. Next, locations of planets. And while this isn't space weather, once again, I like people to be oriented. Leave us a comment if you're from the Orient. Am I still allowed to say that? Ghost proton flux here remains at baseline levels. A tiny spike happened, but that's not anything to write home about. Again, the X-ray flux is getting closer to a C-class background. The background flux is now something like a B9, which is very close to a C1, because this is a magnitudinal chart. A C-class flare is 10 times stronger than a B-class flare, and an M-class flare is 10 times stronger than a C-class flare, and let's move on. Next, we'll show the heliosphere magnetism. This data is derived from ground-based magnetometers, as well as stereo B over here and stereo A right over there. And Earth remains in this North Pole magnetic sector. There is a North Pole-oriented coronal hole facing Earth, which we'll show you next. Whoops. Not the 39th. There is no 39th. All right, there we go. You can see this little North Pole-oriented coronal hole here. As Earth's magnetic field lines point way out into space. A comment there. Thanks for leaving a comment. Timawate. And also DX Bandit 168. I wish the sun would get scary. Been kind of quiet lately. Boring. Yeah, I know. Although it's never really scary. I mean, the sun is the source of all life and energy on Earth. So it's not very scary. The sun is your pal, and it's what makes summers lovely and plants grow and things. But yeah, I hope the sun gets spicy. Let's look at some data from Cerro Tololo here to look at the magnetic fields. We're just going to show today. So there's the magnetic field situation as reported by the ground-based Cerro Tololo magnetogram. And we do have some opportunity for solar flares over here. That's my favorite spot to see flaring. But also over here on this western limb. So the southeast and southwestern limbs both have some flare potential, but not very much. Let's stick with Cerro Tololo. Look at red light. This will show the raw sunspots. Again, not the 39th. There we go. That's better. And play. So yeah, this sunspot group over here, this has a flare potential. This group here has a flare potential. This one, not really so much. So yeah, so the southeastern limb could flare. Southwestern limb is probably the most likely place to see a flare at the moment. That flare watch over there will continue for at least 36 hours, but probably more like 72, as flare potential continues long after sunspots have set. Next, filaments. We like to name them after living people on the channel. And you can see the Eric Schmidt filament here is facing right at the Earth. So this is showing a little longer time frame than those other movies. So this is the Eric Schmidt, one of the Google founders, filament. Eric Schmidt was the CEO when they changed their name to Alphabet, effectively, created a holding company called Alphabet LLC, and moved to the country of Cyprus. So we've got some other large filaments up here as well, but the Eric Schmidt filament remains intact, at least mostly, and it is the most likely thing to produce a major solar storm at the Earth. So that's why we named that one. If you want to name filaments, do it after living humans. Let me give you the opportunity to name one here instead of beating you to it like I usually do. Here's how it's done. Take a screenshot and then open it in something like Microslop's Snip and Sketch. And then watch, I'll put an arrow. That's a terrible arrow. That filament up there in the northern hemisphere, let's name that one, shall we? And here's how it's done. Just go to Twitter, what insane sycophant nutjobs refer to as X, which can never be a brand because it's a letter. You can't name a brand after a letter, branding wizards. Who wants to name the filament? There you go. That's how you name a filament. Just tag at Smashomash in the tweet and add the hashtag name that filament. America's favorite pastime. Electron flux here remains at storm levels, and you can expect it to stay at storm levels and pretty bad GPS performance. There's the GOES electron flux for the past week. There are the past 3 days. Well into storm levels here just after midnight local time for the satellites, which is what these M's represent. This is noontime local time for the satellites. Here is our coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere, electrodynamics, total electron content forecast. These are places with likely GPS errors. Never before and never since. These electrons refracted your signal. You didn't listen to 10,000 maniacs, which is fortunate in the 90s. Radio blackouts are minor, although if we do have any of those flares I talked about, we could see some equatorial radio blackouts. The likelihood of major proton events, and hence long-standing polar radio blackouts, is kind of low. That's just a diagram of the ionosphere to show people altitudes of things. And here's some imagery of the ionosphere. Now, we've seen the South Atlantic anomaly looking like it's moving around. So let's show the animations here. We're going to show the anomalygram and the raw frequency. All right, so there's the megahertz. That's millions of vibrations per second of the F of F2 layer. Yes, these are rough frequency grabs. This is showing the entire planet. So, but it's only showing one layer. It's only showing the F layer, or F of F2 if there is an F2 layer, because it's daytime. So yeah, but this is showing the anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. So anyway, so the African anomaly is clearly here, right on the equator at the African coast. That's very obvious. The South Atlantic anomaly is in the Pacific. It's right here on the west coast of South America, right on the equatorial line. Those are the two weakest spots, this one being much weaker than this one, but it's right where it was weeks ago, once again, right there in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of South America, practically right on the equator. You'll be able to see it real obviously here in the anomalygram as well. So the South Atlantic anomaly is back to where it was a few weeks ago, near the equatorial Pacific off the west coast of South America, not over the South American continent, not down here in the South Atlantic, but in the central Pacific. So the South Atlantic anomaly there wandering about, and it's super obvious from this near real-time imagery. It does not portend doomsday. If you were hoping for doomsday, sorry. Doomsday's been canceled. The global cataclysm has been called off. And our finest days lie ahead if we can stop believing fraud. Next, we're going to show some Earth weather stuff. It's a little on the cool side here in Lehigh Valley, PA. So let's take a look at the blue globe in grayscale. Some more GOES imagery there. And we'll put your comments on the screen. Thanks for leaving comments, those who have. There's the Atlantic sunrise. And by the way, if you haven't checked out the links in the description, there are a bunch of links in there. Check out the homepage, press the share button, and that way you'll see us on social media when you press share and share the videos. Did you know we're doing a 24-hour race on the solstice? Yeah, there's a 24-hour race coming to Brynicksville, Pennsylvania. You know, T-Town, the home of the velodrome.com, the Valley Preferred Cycling Center. Well, right across the street is the Barberdale Park. And some of us are going to ride for 24 hours. It's a thing. Next, the U.S. water vapor map, and it is pretty dry over most of the country, save for the Pacific Northwest, where another atmospheric river makes its way in. Let's take a closer look at the atmospheric river so we can go, ooh, ah, oh my God, an atmospheric river. Look out, folks, a buzzword that people don't understand what it means. Oh no, it's Armageddon. It's the apocalypse because water vapor, dear God. There are a bunch of clouds forming in these areas. Oh no, what will we do? Some people will go outside and go, clouds, I'm mad at those. They're man-made. Yeah, there are idiots on the internet that think clouds are man-made, which is quite pathetic. If you're wondering what it's like where I am, it's 6 degrees Fahrenheit at Allentown International Airport. For our LV viewers, here's the daily forecast for forecast highs. 16 today, Saturday the 31st, tomorrow, high of 19. Sunday, a heat wave, high near 21. Monday, approaching freezing, near 29. That's going to feel like springtime in the valley. And Pennsylvanians are pretty hardcore with our, like the real Pennsylvanians, we like the snow. Anyway, lots of moisture here from the atmospheric river. Oh my God. I hear it's been very warm in BC. No snow up there all winter. Plenty of precipitation for Kentucky and Tennessee as snow falls now in those locations. So there you go. There's the precipitation type map from windy.com. And there's a lot of sleet in the Atlantic Ocean right now. Wet snow, whatever. Lightning is light, but there's some in the Central Pacific. I mean, really, that's the Northern Pacific. That is in the middle of nowhere, folks. Maybe a new Frankenstein monster is being created in the Pacific Gyre, a giant island of plastic. It's a real son of a bittern, that Pacific Gyre. Anyway, here comes one forecast. It's going to be for snow, total positive snow depth change. 72-hour GFS model run coming up. And then we're going to close this mother out. Maybe we'll talk about more economic stuff, but frankly, I don't have the stomach for it. So here is the GFS 72-hour forecast for total accumulated positive snow depth change and heavy, heavy snow coming mainly to North Carolina there. Heavy, heavy snow. And at the end there, some moving in across the Great Lakes. So that's going to be the next storm for the Northeast, it looks like. We'll cover it. It will show up in tomorrow's daily stream. Thanks for tuning in. Congratulations once again on realizing the channel exists. Once again, there's the closest star. We're going to be watching for flares, especially down here. And don't forget over here. So the southeast and southwestern limbs are the flare spots. And until next time, I've been your Julish host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Don't freeze into a block of ice, folks. And until next time, may that solar wind be at your back.